All right. So one thing I want to talk to you guys today about is alcohol and body composition. So alcohol is not just about the empty calories that we're worried about when consuming alcohol. It's actually like what happens inside of the body, like what mechanisms are affected downstream when you drink alcohol. What are the after effects of it, essentially? So we're going to dive into that today. So the first thing is the metabolic halt. So the body treats alcohol as a poison, as a toxin. It does not treat it as a macro, or like a protein, a fat, a carbohydrate. Essentially, your body cannot store alcohol, right? It has to be used as the immediate fuel source. So anything that's going on inside of the body, such as like, fat oxidation, if your body is in a fat loss mode, you're in a muscle building phase, whatever the case may be, and you intake alcohol, well, your body treats it as a toxin and it has to get it out ASAP. So everything else just essentially stops. It comes to a halt. And so essentially, if we're looking at this from a fat loss perspective, lipid oxidation or fat burning, right, is put on hold until that toxin is cleared from the system. So, if you're in a fat loss phase and you go out to drink on the weekends, have a couple beers here and there, that kind of thing, um, you're essentially setting yourself up for a slower fat loss phase just because we all know that you lose fat in phases, right? You lose a little bit of fat at a time, things kind of stall out, and then you lose a little a bit more fat. It's kind of like a downhill ladder, right? Just it stalls for a little bit and then it goes down, stalls for a little bit and then goes down. Well, once you kind of get that momentum going and you drink alcohol, it kind of slows that momentum down because the body has to stop the fat burning process and swap over to getting this toxin out. So, to me, the fat loss just stops just to clear the toxin. So you're essentially setting yourself up for a longer and harder fat loss duration period if you drink alcohol. Just plain out and simple. Now I'm not going to be the type of person to recommend that you cut it out completely. If we lived in a perfect world, I would say do that. But I know a lot of you guys enjoy social events and things like that, so I can't tell you to just cut it out completely. But the more that you can, the better off that your results will be. So another thing is going to be your recovery. So, if you're in the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week, and whatever the case may be, and you're getting after it, you're training hard, right? The alcohol is stopping any kind of would-be gains that you would be getting. So, if we look at muscle protein synthesis from that standpoint of things, it's going to be inhibited. So, alcohol directly interferes with that muscle protein synthesis, meaning that your body just can't repair the muscle tissue that you have just broken down in the gym. So if you're going into the gym, and you're working out and you're really, taxing the body, you're trying to create that stimulus for growth, right? Well, to go from that stimulus of growth into something new that's built, you got to have the proper tools to rebuild it, right? Well, if you have those in place, but also alcohol is in the system, again, everything stops to get that alcohol out of your system. And then on the other hand, it causes you to be dehydrated. So alcohol is a diuretic just at nature. And so, if you drink, expect the next 2 or 3 days of your workout sessions to not be that great because you're still going to be dehydrated, to a degree. And dehydrated muscles are going to be weaker, flatter, less full, and you're more prone to injury at that point. So, not only if you're looking at it from a fat loss perspective where it stops the fat loss, if you're trying to gain muscle as well too, know those extra calories and carbs don't go to your bulking calories, right? It puts a halt to your muscle protein synthesis. So again, another strike on the board for why you shouldn't partake into it. And then another one is the hidden cortisol spike. So you hear it all the time. People say, yeah, I sleep better after I drink a glass of wine. Okay, well, let's not be delusional here. We already know that alcohol is indeed a toxin, right? Hours of sleep that you're in bed, eyes are closed, you're asleep, right? That does not equate to the quality of that sleep, right? If you're REM sleep and deep sleep, is little to none, but you're in bed for 10 hours. Is that good sleep? Did you sleep for 10 hours? No, you barely slept at all. So if we look at REM disruption, alcohol is going to prevent you from reaching that deep restorative sleep. Yeah, you might be asleep to where you're dreaming and you can't, really ever, remembering anything. But if you can't get into that deep restorative REM sleep, you're not recovering at all. On the flip side of that, if you have poor sleep, then that's going to lead to a spike in cortisol, which then on the downstream effect is going to, lead to insufficient hormone revamping, that takes place during the nighttime. So, you go out, on a night of drinking, you hop on the scale the next morning, the scale goes up. Wow. Well, kind of, what we talked about last week, higher cortisol, from the alcohol just being in the system itself is going to cause you to hold more water. Scale is going to go up. So again, strike number three as why that you should limit this and partake in it on a very seldom basis is the hidden cortisol spike. Um, Another one, a lot of you probably have not thought about is the secondary calorie surplus. Now, what do I mean by the secondary calorie surplus? Are we talking about the actual drink itself, right? Because there are some low calorie, alcohol options out there, right? But the drink isn't the only problem. It's the habits that follow it. You guys can probably all remember, back when you were younger in high school, whatever the case may be, you're out on a night of drinking and somehow you end up at Waffle House, right? Um, you're going to partake in a pretty large surplus of calories there, right? And it's due to just the lowered inhibition. Flat out, you're dumber when you drink. Just what it boils down to. Alcohol shuts down the logical part of your brain. And then on the hormonal side of things, alcohol is going to trigger AGRP neurons in the brain. That's going to tell you, hey, you're hungry, when in reality you're not. So don't consume, if you drink, I don't know, what's the Michelob Ultras? Those are like 100 calories, right? I think so. So don't consume, three Michelob Ultras thinking, oh, it's only, 300 calories. But then you consume the 1,300 calories of, ah, well, I don't care anymore, right? It's just a bag of chips, whatever, kind of the case may be. It's, a Coke here, whatever. What I'm getting at is this typically leads to poor choices down the road, which is then going to make you getting back on track just that much harder. And then you have the hangover slump. This impact can last anywhere from 1 to 2 days post drinking, especially the older that you get. So, your energy is going to just crash out. Your neat activity, such as like you fidgeting, going for steps, you moving around in general, this is going to be decreased the next day. And you're less likely to hit your step count goal, fidget less, and choose laying on the couch over going for a walk the day after that alcohol consumption. This just creates a gap in your weekly calorie expenditure, and now you have to make up for it, right? And I'm always a believer of like, if you had a bad day, with food, or whatever the case may be, like, I get it, life happens, and like, I never tell people to like go make up for it the next day, right? Like if you ate a donut and you want to go punish yourself and go do an hour of cardio the next day, right? And I don't think that's the right approach. But when it comes to alcohol, I have a very different stance, right? Like if you choose to partake in that, knowing that it's a toxin, knowing that it's not, you don't accidentally go out and have six drinks, right? Like, yeah, somebody might bring donuts, to the work site, right? And you might eat one, right? But you don't accidentally drink 6 to 8 beers Friday night, right? Like you cognitively know that's a bad decision. So in that case, like, yeah, I think you should have to, um, kind of close that gap if you can, kind of going into the next week, especially if it, involves the next day, your steps are down, you don't work out, you don't hit your macros, you don't hit your meal plan, whatever the case may be. For me, it's different when it comes to alcohol. Like, you're an adult, you chose to do that. Now you have to make up for what you didn't do the day before. And that's kind of how I see it. So how do you manage the impact of this? So, if you do choose to drink, do it strategically. You guys have probably all heard of this. Every drink that you have a glass of water with it. If you know that you're going to drink some, later that evening, try to hit your protein intake goal. Before you start partaking in that. Now if you're a golfing at 10 a.m. and you're up, drinking a Coors Light at 10 a.m. kind of individual. That's kind of a little harder to do. But just make sure that during the day, at some point, that you do get your protein intake in. And then try to keep a dietary fat on the lower end as well too. Um, you know, just so that like we're not storing that fat, whereas alcohol stops all the metabolic processes, right? We don't want that fat to be stored while the metabolism is trying to play catch up and get the alcohol out of the system, right? So again, kind of another overstated thing. Just know that if you drink the next 24 to 48 hours, you're not going to have your best training sessions. So just have to be patient. Just make sure that you are rehydrated, and get back on track the best that you can. Now, I say all this, and you guys are probably, oh, he's definitely an alcohol Nazi. Like he doesn't like it, in any degree. And as a fitness coach, yeah, I'm not really a fan of it at all. But I'm also a realist as well too. Like I know that that's just part of some people's lives, and I know that that's not something that some people can cut out entirely. And I get it, but the main thing that you need to do is just try to limit it as much as you can and quit using it in social scenarios to make yourself feel comfortable, I guess is the best way to put it. Because in reality, when I was in high school, college, even then I really was not a big drinker, but I always, if I was at a get together where there was alcohol, things and in that nature, I might have one, but that one would last me the whole night. It was just because I had to have something in my hand, right? We've probably all been there before. And I'm not saying that that's what you have to do, but you just have to keep in mind that if you are trying to hit a certain goal in your fitness journey, like there's just some things that you're just gonna have to not do as much. It's the same as you can't go to the gas station and get a bag of Doritos and down that whole thing in the parking lot and expect to lose weight, right? It's kind of the same with alcohol. You just can't go 5, 6 days a week, perfect on your meal plan. It come to Saturday night, you get belligerent drunk, wake up Sunday and think, oh, well, no harm, no foul, because that's definitely not the case. So, just with anything, moderation is going to be the key. Specifically with alcohol, though, it just needs to be more. It needs more careful attention with what you're doing to not let it get out of control. Essentially, um, anybody have any questions, any thoughts to add on this?
Would you say that that 48-hour rule is applicable to like any amount of alcohol consumption, or like is there kind of like a like if there's one, say one glass of wine had, like would that 48-hour window still be applicable? And if you had more, would it be longer?
Yeah, I would say that's probably based on your individual tolerance, I would assume.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, obviously, if you have, one beer or something, like your workout's probably not going to be terrible for the next 2 days, right? But let's be honest, like who just drinks one?
yeah,
That's, I mean, now unless you go to like, a Mexican restaurant and you get a margarita, but like one margarita is pretty big and compared to a couple beers, right? So, I mean, I think it depends on what you drink, what your tolerance is, how much you weigh as well too. I think a lot of it goes into it, but either way it goes, you're going to be impaired to some degree, at least,
yeah,
the next day. I mean, hell, if you probably had a beer at lunchtime, you went to the Mexican restaurant, you got a Dos Equis, and then you try to train at 6 o'clock tonight, probably not going to be your best session.
yeah,
Tomorrow might be okay, but I think it just kind of all depends.
yeah.
So, anybody else have anything? Well, if not, I'll let you guys go a little early today. I appreciate you guys showing up. If you have any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out and let me know. But if not, I'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see y'all.